we got to talk about the things that may escape the eye, but that are also very important. And as we get up the draft, LS, you have something to say about some of the builds. Let's start with Azir and his choice of footwear.
The draft, I mean, starting things off, the Olaf is a little bit out of place. I know they commented about that on the cast. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Just because you have Seraphine, it doesn't mean that you should just pick Olaf. And then also, I mean, there's the Kai'Sa too, which Crownshot on the LCS coach streams, he always flames the pick. So I was really surprised to see it come out here. In terms of Azir's build, he went Merc Treads Rush in this game, but this is actually something that we touched on earlier today, where Verdant Barrier would have been really good into Banshees, because if you just go Sork Pen Boots with Ludens, you're going to deal true damage to almost everyone on the enemy team, and then you complete into Banshee's Veil, which has massive upside against the enemy team comp. So going the Merc Treads Rush, he stunted himself in lane, he really hurt himself, and then it pulls away from Azir's power in mid game.
Yeah, and I think there was another build that also surprised us too, which was on the other side with the Lilia, where instead of going for perhaps the Liandry's first, the order was different. It was going for Demonic Embrace first, and I went in to like actually see the numbers on it all and try and see like why would we go for that type of decision? And I don't personally believe it's valued. Like if you look at Liandry's, it only costs 400 gold more. It gives you more AP. It gives you ability haste. Its passive is going to deal more damage. I think the only argument that can be made for a Demonic Embrace is that it gives you more survivability. The passive gives you resistances. It also just gives you health on its own, but still, I felt like the ordering was really strange there, LS.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another example of like Boris like sort of leaking into, you know, season 11. But in reality, you go Liandry's is 400 more expensive, and the argument that you have is like what you just said. You get a little bit more you get HP and you get some resistances because of Demonic's passive. But the thing is that for 900 gold, you basically get the HP from Demonic Embrace. But there's no possible way to get the value of Liandry's if you open with Demonic Embrace, whereas you can get pretty equal equivalency if you just go Liandry's first and then get Giant's Belt. So the curving, the order, it just made no sense.
I really appreciate that you two break this down, because I think sometimes it's easy to say, oh, you shouldn't have built this and that, but you're really sketching it and why it is important in the context of the game and how it played out in some of these important moments. I also want to look at the specific replay that you requested in terms of the Rift Herald, if you remember, before we show it. Harking back to, oh no, ruined. You talked about this earlier.
No, so this is actually not the second Herald, but the first rather. And because of this ward on the top side of the map, Tinks is seen starting up the Herald. And if you actually were to pan down and look at what's going on in the bottom lane, is the lane is pushing against Vitality. Skeens is down here, so what can Jesu and Tweets do? They don't have good ranged wave clear or anything less like this, so they cannot break the freeze. With a cannon minion there, there's absolutely no chance. So they're forced to play, you know, from quite a distance, and because it's also a range support, they can't even approach the wave because they get poked out.
And the other thing about this is when you're doing the Rift Herald right here, you notice that all of his camps are up as well. And when you're trying to rush towards the level 9 breakpoint for the 35% increased EXP in the jungle, it doesn't make any sense. You're just stifling yourself. Your bot lane gets reduced amount of EXP, or well, not reduced, they get denied that EXP, they get denied some gold because you're not there to help them. And then you just actually set yourself behind in the jungle against the Olaf. Nothing made any sense about it, and he just stifles himself so hard for no reason.
And I think another thing that people maybe don't take into consideration when it's like, what's the value of Herald versus other things on the map is, turret plates are one of the only sources of gold in League of Legends that do not come tethered to EXP. So you might get 360 gold off of a couple of turret plates, but that's by itself. 360 gold from turret plates is worth less than 360 gold from minions because there is not that source of EXP. And I think that people don't appreciate that because the number doesn't pop up and you don't use EXP to buy items, but it's very important.
And unless you sketched earlier in ReadyCheck how teams across the world are making this mistake in the second Herald, do you think it's as prevalent in the first Herald and they're making those trades too often and losing too much for it?
I think second Herald in general is usually a pretty big blunder if you're going to have a team fight around it. But if you're getting it for free, then it's fine. I think first Herald, again, you have to really pull out a calculator. And I think the reason that it feels so good is because in solo queue, you get it for free. And so this leads you to having this dopamine kick where it feels nice. And in solo queue, accelerating, getting ahead, translates to leads and wins a lot more easily than something, say, like in competitive, where space advantage is a lot harder and more difficult to define. So you end up getting it, you stunt yourself here, and it just creates more problems. But it's that magical thinking versus scientific thinking where pro players often end up getting lost, and that's why we see things like Herald mistakes, itemization mistakes, and things of that nature.
Let's also highlight some of the positive here for SK. As said, they really rallied behind their Vayne to make sure that it was set up for success. And we saw multiple multi-man sleeps out of the Lilia and an immediate follow-up by SK, and that was just really, really nice to watch.
Yeah, and this Baron fight that really just spun the game out of control, it started off with Crownshot getting a pick onto blue, but then of course you're going to see Tinks from Overwall gets the 3-man sleep, and a lot of people are going to be like, wow, the 3-man sleep, it's crazy. It's really good here. The follow-up from Rakan is also great, but I'm sorry to do this to you, LS. The Renekton follow-up after this, the front line was just really difficult for Vitality to deal with. You can see he pops the Dominus, and then after this charm, he just eats 5 people. The multi-man Q Gore Drinker, he just got like 13 different added health bars because of that combo.
Well, it was definitely looking like Godzilla right there. But honestly, I have no idea what Vitality were thinking in this. And I mean, this is kind of, I think the community is going to be a little bit harsher on Crownshot because Crownshot is supposed to be the shot caller, right? I mean, this is what everyone's talking about. So who's calling for the Baron? Because it doesn't really make that much sense. And SK, they just smack them. And from that point, I mean, Vitality, they started floundering about identically to how they did in the game from yesterday.
And that is what worrying me a little bit, because this is also something that we saw Vitality last split around, right? Last season around. So it is about time that they deal with these things. But as said, first week, but it's hard not to be over panicked because we're so far in the season already, right?
It's the first week for Crownshot, but it's also the halfway point, and they're struggling to find wins.
Yeah, so let's look at the other team, and a very important win for the side of SK Gaming, of course. Let's look at this final Treats flank. I mean, he's been so great to watch LS so far.
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at the mini-map here, right, there's no objective on Dragon, there's no objective on Baron, there's nothing to fight over, and also Vitality were threatening Soul Point here. So the question ends up becoming, you have a bot wave coming into you, and you have a top wave coming into you. Why the hell are we in mid lane? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and SK, once again, just basically say, what the hell are you doing? And they just capitalize on them and smack them. And I have no idea what I'm witnessing. There's no reason to be in mid.
Yeah.
Zero.
It's another 3-man sleep, another Rakan flank. It's just caught too far forward.
Yeah, unlucky. I keep trying to pull it on the positive and highlight SK, and then LS comes in and he's like, there's no reason to be there. But, you know, that's why we have you here as well. So now, LS, maybe your final verdict on the first week of Vitality with Crownshot and where you think this is going?
I'm really worried for it because it seems like there is some positives, obviously, I think, with some draft highlights, but for the most part, it just seems like the mid and late game, they're still really overeager. They're willing to jump into things in a bit of a erratic thing. And SK in this game, I mean, I'm trying to reference, they're really good at punishing these mistakes. I mean, that's what they were doing really well. They were in position to just clap them every single time they misstepped.
Yes, they did. Well, a win for SK, and we'll see in our next game if Magic Felix can show off some more magic tricks as he and Astralis go up against